All right, we are officially live. So, welcome to July 20th, everyone that is out there watching or is going back and watching this later. I'm Tracy Wiggins here at the University of North Alabama, and we are on here today with Mr. Jeff Queen. Most of you know who Jeff is because he's done a thing or two in his career along the way. But he's been a member of the Bluecoats, the Velvet Knights, the Santa Clara Vanguard, the Blue Knights, Blast, taught many, many lines in the country, is now working for Yamaha, and might be even the dealer rep for lots of you out there. He's also got some books out, and he's just an all-around cool dude and smart dude and heck of a player. So he is here today to take you through today's Chopping with the Stars section. So, Jeff Queen.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today's going to be a little interesting. As Tracy mentioned, now work with Yamaha, so I haven't been teaching for like the last year. And in all honesty, I haven't been playing in quite some time. Reason for that is that I actually suffered a tragic injury playing disc golf. It's a dangerous sport. Be very careful out there if you're playing disc golf. But I tore my bicep quite badly, and I've been going through some great physical therapy and all that. So this will be the first time that I've actually picked up sticks in a while to really play for a while. So I thought it would be a good idea to go through what it is that I would typically do to warm up or sort of get back in shape. If we kind of back up a little bit in what I'm calling my previous life now, when I used to do a lot of clinics and all that kind of thing, with teaching, and I was teaching at a university, at Butler University when I lived out in Indianapolis. I taught full time at Carmel High School, and then would still get out to do about 12 to 15 clinics a year. So, it's about once a month or so here or there. But, would play with the students on their drums a lot in our warm ups, but then wouldn't really get to sort of let loose until I would go do clinics. So I would often start, like on Wednesday of that week and work my way up to what the gig would be over the weekend, typically on a Saturday. So I'm going to go through some of that process with you. I think Tracy may have shared the link of some of the exercises that we might go through here too, but a lot of them are pretty stock, so I'll go a lot by rote. But if you do have the link through the Dropbox there, it's a kind of my stock packet. There's some grit exercises in there, some timing exercises in there. There's some practice habits, a practice log in there as well. I'm kind of scrolling through it right now to sort of help you outline what it is that you want to do for the week. I found this, especially when I went back to school at the age of 31 for a music degree. I found that particular page, the practice log, very, very helpful to me. It was something that allowed me to organize my time, to really set and look at my goals for the week. And I'm a person who likes lists and writes things down. So that always helped me kind of go for it. And then also a way for me to hold myself accountable. Like, hey, if I wanted to get through, X amount of measures of music and I look at what I did through the week, well, yeah, there's a reason you didn't do that because you didn't orchestrate your time correctly. So that practice log really helped me a lot get through. The next few pages of that are just direct excerpts from my book, The Next Level. I wrote this in really kind of after I aged out of drum corps, and it took about 7 or 8 years to really get going and to write, but really goes through what I think about technique and some definitions and things like that. So there's grip fundamentals in there. Won't cover too much of that. I think we're all kind of playing already, but really just how I think about holding the stick, both the right and the left hand. Talk a bit about the front and the back of the grip. So I think of the front of the grip as basically my fulcrum, but also adding my middle finger in there too. So my three fingers up here, thumb, index, and middle, constitute the front of my grip in my right hand, and then the back two fingers constitute the back of the grip. Traditional grip, it's kind of split as well, where this fulcrum here, the V, the webbing fulcrum, becomes the front of my grip a little bit too. But then the back of the grip is really my index finger here, and then my ring finger that helps catch underneath. So I'll deal with those concepts a little bit as we're talking through some exercises. Height system. I do talk about cushioning the stick in there too. So that's a term that I came up with, just to not play too harsh, right? Like to where you can kind of see the stick jiggle a little bit rather than stop so harshly. I was a fan of staying a lot more relaxed when I played. So when I hit those accents, I wasn't shocking my hands too much and really allowing it to be cushioned rather than completely stopped. Another concept I talk about there is the tap hum. And the idea there is that if you're playing evenly, you can kind of start to hear a drone through the pad or through the room, especially if you're in a boomy place. I'm in a carpeted office right now, so it's not too boomy, but the sticks resonation, the pads resonance, any of the other things in the room, if they're basically vibrating the same, you'll get that tap hum and that resonance. So that's something that you can work for to balance your hands together, as well as make sure you're playing in time, etc. So one of the things that I certainly focus on with every student is basic strokes. And we won't stay in basic land for too long, but that's basically a full stroke, a downstroke, a tap stroke, and an upstroke. And really getting those two loud notes, the full and the down, to sound the same, and then the tap and the up to sound the same. So if we're going through these exercises here, we've got your stock 8 on a hand. So this one is basically right, left, right, left, right, left, and then a measure of eighth notes and a measure of 16th notes, measure of alternating eighth notes, and measure of alternating 16th notes. So if you're looking at it, you can go with me, but pretty stock exercise. You'll get a feel for it as we go. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and right, left, right, left, right, left. Now alternate. And then we're going to do that every other time. We're going to play doubles for the alternating last 2 bars. So that'll be for the last 2 bars. We'll do that version this time, and then we'll just keep going through. We'll do a couple variations with it just to get our hands moving. Here we go. This is the doubles version. 1, 2, ready, and... doubles, singles this time. A little faster, doubles. And a couple different approaches are being used there, right? Like when I'm playing the straight up 8s, my hand's pretty open, very free with my stroke, very loose with my grip. I'm holding on just tight enough to where I don't want the stick to come out of my hand. Same thing with my left hand. I'm letting the ring finger drop off, and I'm only using it to catch the stick when I stop it, basically down here. When I'm going with the singles, kind of doing what I would call a check stroke with the singles on the 8th notes. It's not really a downstroke, but it's not really a full stroke either. So it's kind of right in between. Rebounds a little bit higher than a downstroke would be. And then straight full strokes for that. Same thing with the doubles. I'm actually doing full down for the slow ones. And then straight bounces for the 16ths. So what we're getting here is a lot of different approaches, a really good workout with the full down tap up type of idea, really mostly full and down in all honesty, but allowing that to happen as we go through the 8s. So we'll start the whole sequence again, back on the singles, a little faster. 1, 2, ready, and... Listen to that last note as well. Make sure you're not accenting it. Doubles now. Okay, now we're going to do just 16 on a hand and explore some dynamics basically. So this is going to be right, left, just 16 on a hand, and then down and up with each of those, or up and down. So we'll start low and do that. So this is straight up 16 on a hand, all up. 1, 2, ready, and... again. Now down and up, so we're decrescendo and crescendo. Now up and down. One more of those. Straight up again, 1, 2, all up. Cool. Just getting a little bit warmed up there. Like I said, I have not played in a while. This one of the variations on the 8 on a hand exercise in the little packet is the quarter note triplet variation, and I really like this one because it forces you to keep the same motion in a faster or a slower stroke. So this is basically 6 counts of eighth notes, then 4 counts of quarter note triplets, or 2 quarter note triplets, and then another 6 counts of eighth notes. So you can kind of think of it as a quarter note triplet sandwich. With the bread being the 6 counts of eighth notes on the front side, and the meat being the 2 quarter note triplets, and then the other piece of bread being the other eighth notes. This is all the way through on the right hand and then all the way through on the left hand. And we're moving from eighth note speed. So I want you to, in this case, move the stick at the same velocity every time. So the stick's actually going to hang out a little bit more in the upside on the quarter note triplet. Right? If I'm moving here, okay, so that helps develop what I would call the velocity stroke a little bit more as well, because we want that kind of pop and that lag and that hang actually on the front or on the end of that quarter note triplet. So here is that variation. We'll just go right hand, left hand, then a tap. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. One more time. Okay. So that's all in that one height kind of vibe. I often found too that I couldn't really get warm until I played some 2 height stuff. So if you scroll down there, we're going to do some bucks and some couple other things in there too. So in this particular thing, we're going to focus on, I don't know what page it is. It's, I guess, page 20 of the packet there, but it starts with hugs, flam tap buildup, then hucks, paradiddle buildup, and huck, diggas, flam accent buildup. All of these we can learn by rote if you're not looking at them, so it's no big deal. But we're basically deal with a right, left type of variation. So we're going to have this, then this, back to the right. Okay. We'll get into the root exercises of a lot of these and kind of go through all of those. The hucks are these. The huck diggas in 12/8. the hugs, these in 4. Okay. And then we'll also deal with triplet bucks as well. So this will be kind of a big one-handed type medley with it. Each of these will be right, left, one measure of each in their given time signature. You'll catch on pretty quickly with what we're doing. I'm going to try to say it in between, but we'll also do a triplet bucks that we're going to keep in duple time. So if we're doing this, right, you'll hear the tap like this, then right? So you can think of it in 3/4 or even 6/4 there. So here we go. This is just straight eighth note bucks. 1, 2, ready, and. A couple things to talk about here real quick too is how we control that accent, right? So when I'm doing that, I let my fingers absorb the shock. I keep them firm, but then they absorb the shock. So that's that cushioning that I'm talking about. But it's very clear where the stick stops, right? That's a massive thing, is to be very, very clear where that stick stops, right? Not have it come past where you want it to be and then settle back down, right? So as soon as we, especially as we get into like triplet bucks, both of those taps being at the same height, the hucks, same thing there. And then when we have those as well, right? We want that clear, distinct 2 heights. One thing that I would say a lot to students is make it look like it sounds, okay? If you see the heights the way that they're supposed to be, right? Big and small, high and low, you're going to get, you should be able to see that and feel that, right? Like understand those 2 levels. It makes sense, right? Just like if I'm looking like this when I'm talking to you, but whispering, it's a little confusing, right? So we want to see what we hear, right? Make it look like it sounds, right? Here, back to regular bucks. 2, ready, and. Now triplet bucks, again, stay in duple. Back to regular bucks. One more time. Cool. Another variation we could throw at that is to swing the triplet buck. This gets an inverted type of motion, so that turns it into a triplet, an eighth note triplet versus 2 eighth notes. So and that gets into that kind of inverted motion where we're going low to high. So let's try that. 1, 2, ready, and. Straight. Cool. So appears to be said too, a lot of what I'm about to go through is a lot of stuff that I picked up at North Texas and working with Paul Rennick and Tom Float. This became kind of a staple of how I taught. I felt that these types of exercises really did everything for you. You know, if you could play all of these things that we're going to end up going through here in the next little bit, you could play almost anything. It's sort of a juxtaposition too. So we're forcing our hands to do some different things throughout this, right next to each other, different skills. So, you know, at one point you're doing a certain motion and you get into that groove, but then you have to switch to other things, which is exactly what music is. It's not always the same motion. So I found that this was very helpful in getting students to be very versatile in their playing and being able to play a lot of different things. One other little variation we're going to go through with these, with the Bucks thing, is being able to fill it in. So this is working it on taps, not just the one hand, but filling in that other tap too. So we play some more appropriate things with both hands there. So we could fill in the triplet as it is, right, and then just count 4 as a straight triplet to go to the other side. So that filled in version. Right, and when we go to these filled ins, it's going to be right, right, left, left. And then if we were to fill in the duple version, we're going to fill it in on the front side. So we create 1 E and. Or fill it on the back side, create 1 and a. And I'm not playing beat 4 so I can switch hands. Okay, so we're going to go back and forth with regular Bucks, triplet Bucks, groups of 3, swung 8th note Bucks, and then filled in on the front or the back with the regular Bucks or within the triplet on that. So this is just straight 8th note Bucks. 1, 2, ready, and. Hold on 1 second. My handle keeps falling down. Desk chair versus drum throne. Anyway, here we go. 1, 2, ready, and straight 8th note Bucks. Fill it in on the front. So 1 E and, right, right, left, left. Fill it in on the back. When you're doing these fill-ins too, really try to make sure that they stay the same, right? That you've established this, that other tap that you're filling in is all there at the same height too. Other one that we can do, obviously we can fill it in straight together, right? So fill it in all would be that, and then you still stop on 4 E and to switch hands. So let's try that one. This is filling in everything. So you're going to play in straight 16th notes up through 4 E and in the second measure. 1, 2, ready, and. Oops. One more time on that for good measure. Now we're going to triplets, right? Fill those in. Okay, so all of that should start to just, it involves both your hands when you start to do that. So your hands should start to be feeling pretty good. We're going to move into the other sort of 3 greatest hits here, if you will, which is the hugs, these guys, hucks, or huck diggas. So this brings up another concept that I think is pretty consistent with the way that I taught, and really with just drumming in general, is that you can hopefully break things down into some pretty simple concepts. So if we think of the first thing that I really talked about playing wise, full, down, tap, up, right? We could start to break things down into combinations of those, and then we could also break them down into note groupings. Most things that you're going to play are going to be some combination of a single, a double, a triple, or a quad. The more notes that we get into, the less common that is, but they do happen. The group of 4 happens in flam paradiddles. Right, you can kind of have that. The group of 3 in the flam accents or the huck diggas. Right, all of those things start to come into play. So if we can then go back a little bit, and if this was, you know, day one at band camp at a high school, we would have talked a lot about double beat, triple beats, and how to apply those at different dynamics as well. So here, dealing with these three basic things, and then probably interjecting some eights and interjecting some bucks back in there too. So with the hugs, it's a controlled decrescendo. It's also what a flam tap is. Okay. With the hucks, it's a paradiddle or a paradiddle diddle, but it's strict 2 heights. Right? I'm stopping the stick. We can do some filled-in variations with those. And the huck diggas is the flam accent, like I said. So again, 2 heights versus this decrescendo that is the hug. So let's start with the hugs. And this is also how I would introduce Moeller to my students as well, without going into all of the whippy and all of this. It's that the concept that I have with Moeller, or that stuck with me, is that it's one motion for multiple sounds. You know, it is whippy. It is, you know, the lift and the break of the wrist and the use of the elbow and the arm and all those things. But without going into all of that technical stuff, we can just say, hey, you play a quarter note, but hold on to the stick in a fashion that you get 3 notes out, right? Allow your fingers to help the stick a little bit, but let that help you. So these are the hugs. 1, 2, ready, and. Again. Hucks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Huck diggas. 1, 2, ready, and. Back to hugs. Back to hugs. Okay, so what we're going to do is a couple variations on the hugs, and then morph together the hugs and the hucks a little bit too.
So Jeff, real quick, we have a question. Kyle Blair asked, with the threes, what muscle or finger group do you teach to control the rebound with, primarily in the left hand?
So with any 2-heighted type of thing, right, the answer would be the same. It would be the same for that or for this. Yeah, I guess it could bear talking just a little bit more about 2-height approach in general. So when, like the cushioning thing that I talked about at the very, very beginning, before maybe a lot of folks were on, but is the idea that I'm going to use my back fingers for the most part to control height. I'm going to use the front part of my grip. So in my right hand, the back fingers are the ring and the pinky, and then the index, middle, and thumb. And then in my left hand, the front of the grip is the squeeze here in this V and my thumb. And then the back of my grip is also the thumb, but a lot of the index finger, and then the ring finger I use to catch the stick. So to answer that question specifically, in the right hand, when I'm doing this, I'm playing down that from the rest of it. And then I'm able to move into wherever else I need to go. So I can stop the stick, hold on there. I also believe very firmly in American grip in the right hand, right? I don't believe in German so much. It's not as strong of a place, and I don't get too French either. I'm right at that 45, so I can get the thumb kind of on top of the stick, but not all the way on top of it, and really allow that to help stop the stick from coming back up, as well as when it pivots off the fulcrum, I can engage those back fingers, right, and still be very relaxed. If we're thinking about the group of the three, depends on the speed for me. I'm a little bit more wrist oriented, but I do use my fingers as well. So it depends on how fast I'm going. If I'm a little slower, you're going to have 3 wrist strokes in there that are probably 90% wrist and 10% finger. If I'm faster, it's going to be my fingers, right? And allowing that to happen. We've got to create that space here too, right? Allow the stick room to move with your fingers. So it's open in there. Try to move it. Always funky with the camera, but to where it's open in there, right? I'm not there, right? Letting it be open. Same thing in the left hand. The space that I have with my ring finger is the same kind of space that I have between my palm and the stick here. So if I'm playing a downstroke in my left hand, the thumb and the index are what's going to stop it and squeeze very quickly to cushion, but stay relaxed. Okay, but as I'm coming down, my ring finger's off the stick. And then when I hit, like you can kind of slow motion here, but fingers off the stick, and then as soon as it hits, it's going to catch it. But it's going to reflect off of the index and the thumb, and then just be caught in my ring finger. Okay, and then I'm going to play those lower notes. Again, same thing, whether it's fast or slow. If it's slow, there's going to be 3 unencumbered low end bounces from my wrist. If it's faster, I'm going to be incorporating my thumb and my index finger a little bit as the fingers. Okay, with that. Very useful to do exercises in any of your hands. This will be a slight little tangent, but to be able to get into your fingers. So again, mentioning that I did play a lot of American, or I do play pretty American grip in my right hand. We're going to actually shift and play a little French in the right hand real quick, just so we can get to the fingers a little bit. But here we can learn to isolate the fingers a little bit more. Okay, if I go totally French grip, this is actually a great timpani type of exercise as well, but can get into my index finger here by itself and the fulcrum, then my middle, and then ring, and then pinky, and can move back and forth. So you can kind of do 8 on a finger with that. Then when you're comfortable with that, move into your normal grip. You just lose the index finger portion of that, because at that 45, it could slip out a little bit. That's why I recommend going French. So you can really just let the stick rest on that index finger and do this just to isolate those fingers a little bit. And what I'm literally doing is playing just with my pinky, just with my ring, just with my middle, and then just with my index and my thumb. Same thing in the left hand, just the thumb or just the index. And what you do with the index fingers, you end up kind of doing a little bit of that with getting that going. But understanding how each of those work independently really helps control your heights and control your sound. So down to this, right? Not just thumb, not just finger, but a little bit of both. At this tempo for me, yeah, I'm still turning my wrist a little bit on that. Same thing here with those. Hopefully that answers your question. Moving to then where we were going with the hugs and the hucks. So what I want to do is go back and forth between hugs and hucks. So this is going to be 4 of hugs, 4 of those. Back to those. And this is where that juxtaposition comes in. It's 2 contrasting motions, right? We're open, that first note hits and the hand is open, allowing those other 2 notes to happen in decrescendo. And then very contrasting motion where I play a downstroke, okay? And I'm kind of in that bucks motion to play those, okay? So this is basically 4 and 4 back and forth, right hand for 4 measures, hugs, hucks, hugs, hucks. Say that 4 times fast, 5 times fast. Then left hand, same thing, right into it. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. Left hand. One more time on that. Sorry, I switched hands. It's true what they say, if you don't use it, you lose it in a sense, right? I haven't taught in a while, so my flow is a little bit off too. Something you do every day and then you don't do for a while, it goes away. So therefore, you got to practice every day. There you go. What we're going to do now is go 4-2-1 with that. So we're going to take the whole grid slash 4-2-1 concept and do hucks, hugs all the way through. So this is going to be the twos. Okay, so really concentrate when you get to the ones. It's really easy to let those rhythms slip a little bit and get there. So this is going to be 4 counts of hugs, 4 counts of hucks, then 2 and 2, 2 and 2, and then 1 of each. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. Left hand. Great one to really work that, again, that juxtaposition of skills. Another variation you can do with the hugs is going to be adding a 4 on the end. Okay, so that last one is just 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, release. Okay, let's do hugs just with the 4 on the end, and then I'll call out the 4-2-1. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. One more time on that. Four, two, one. One more time. Cool. All right, let's just going to show you a couple of different variations that you can do with all the other things. So the flamped or the hugs, like I said, is a flam tap as well. So we can do this, add a grace note, add a primary note. Same thing with the left hand. We can take the hucks and do the filled in versions with those as well, right? So we can have here, fill it in on the front, back, or all the way through. Left hand, same thing. And then the huck diggers is the flam accent buildup, and that's really the concept that's in the entire book here too, is that I take every rudiment and do a one-handed breakdown, and then this sort of adding on of the buildup of the whole thing too. So lots of great exercises in there for just rudiments in there, and then probably 5 or 6 with each rudiment that's a little bit more advanced and a little bit, just working flow with those rudiments as well. So we've got the huck diggers, then grace note, primary note, same thing with the left hand, So all of those are fun ones to just really basic, really working that consistency and that hand motion throughout everything. So let's move on to a couple other things that I would use a lot. Um, I think learning your basic rudiments, right? And that's in my mind what's really popular, not popular so much as fundamental these days. Flam accents, flam taps, inverts, um, probably the French roll, obviously rolls and things of that nature too. So we're gonna just do a little bit of a spree type of thing here. Pretty standard. Gonna be flam accents, flam drags, back to the flam accents, cheese, flam accents, flam fives, flam accents, inverts, flam accents, invert cheese, and we'll just stop right there. Okay, so always back to the flam accent as the check. Hand should feel pretty good by now too. And let's see what we can do with that. So this will be about here. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and. Feels good to play. Let's actually throw in flam taps in there as well and chachuttas. So after we finish the flam fives, let's throw in cheese chachuttas as well. Kind of jumping from one-handed to all of it. So after we finish the flam fives, we're going to do chachuttas, then cheese chachuttas, then back to flam accents, and then we'll do flam taps, flam accents, inverts, flam accents, cheese inverts. So the only time we're not going back to a flam accent check is after the flam fives, where it's a chachutta check, and we'll go into cheese chachuttas. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. Chachuttas, flam taps, inverts, cheese inverts. Again. Cheese, flam fives, chachuttas. So I know we kind of jumped the shark a little bit getting into one-handed stuff and then moving into that. But a lot of how I would also play in my own time is what feels good to my hands. And it was time to do a little something else other than these one-handed things. And that's what felt natural right there. So that's what I jumped into. Let me show you a little trick. So this is something that Pete Sappinen showed me years ago about how to kind of fake playing inverted cheese really fast. Okay, so if we're doing this, right, you can get so fast. But the trick was to play all on the right hand. Okay, so it's cheese, or low diddle, excuse me. So, and then you would accent your left hand. Or, okay. So that would make it look like you were playing inverted cheese really fast. So, oh, it's been a while. So anyway, fun little trick there. Let's move into, if you're looking at the packet, this is going to go up to the accent tap exercise that's in there. And we're not going to go through the whole accent tap, but it's just a version of 7/8 paradiddle that I want to jump into with you. And this gets into certainly more choppy, not super basic stuff. But 7/8 paradiddle being this, paradiddle, 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 diddle, repeat it, invert it. Okay, straight 7/8 paradiddle is just two paradiddles and a paradiddle diddle twice, and then flipped paradiddle diddle, two paradiddles. So if you're looking at this accent tap, it's the B to C section that we're going to do. And the only difference here is that, excuse me, there's a 9/8 bar at the end, which just adds another paradiddle to put it off the left. It's a huge proponent of playing things off the left hand when I taught and when I play. I think it's always very important to be balanced in your hands, that you can play rudiments off both hands, especially rudiments that don't alternate. Paradiddle diddles, Swiss triplets, to name two of the most popular ones that people struggle with off the left hand. So let's just play the root exercise a couple times. So you can sing it. You can think of the groupings 2-2-3, 2-2-3, 3-2-2, 3-2-2-2 for the 9/8 bar. However that goes. So let's play it. 1, 2, and ready, and paradiddle, 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 diddle. Left. Okay, let's do that a couple more times. 1, 2, ready, and. One more time. Okay, so we're going to play with some accent variations on this. And again, all of the versions of that are in the Next Level book as well. So we're accenting just the downbeat. So let's accent both of the single notes. So the downbeat and the E, if you will. So it would be. So on and so forth. Here we go. 1, 2, and ready, and. A little faster. Okay, we can now accent just the doubles. So on and so forth. 1, 2, ready, go. More time. Can accent just the second note. Stuff like that. So any of the accent variations could work. You can do the single and the double. So just by kind of gridding the accents through this exercise, you come up with a lot of different sticking combinations that will really make you just really figure it out. Figure out how to play great taps, figure out how to stay in time, not rush an accented diddle, not closing the taps down, and all those things too. Other variations to do with this. Let's flam the downbeats. Okay, the whole thing. 1, 2, ready, and. One more time. let's play choo-choos, right? Or diddle, or sorry, flam the diddles, right? Try that. A little faster on that one. Then we can kind of book report this whole thing. So there would be a couple variations to go through that. We could diddle the downbeats. Diddle the second note of the diddle. And then that creates sort of the book report version of this. So book report being a paradiddle with a diddle on the downbeat, accented, a flam on the slow diddle or the and then a diddle on the second note of the diddle. Okay. What's funny is that these came sort of in vogue, like, I don't know, mid 2000s or something like that. And I remember learning about them in like 92, 91, 92, something like that, from a guy named Paul Stibbets at my apartment in San Jose when I was watching Santa Clara. Anyway, so this whole thing with book reports would be something like this. Oh, has been a minute. Okay. I think it's important to stop for a quick second right now. Like, I literally haven't drummed in a year, almost over a year, more than 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And since February, when I injured myself, I picked up sticks once about a month out of there to see if I could play, and I couldn't. And then today I started playing maybe 20 minutes before I got on the call with Tracy. The reason that I can still somewhat, at least right now, play some of this stuff is because I spent so much time going slow and really training my body and training my muscles to do it. So I literally, I'm not lying. I'm not even trying to make excuses for how I sound right now. Anyway, I'm trying to say that the more time that you spend going slow, the more you're going to remember it. And your body will learn it and learn it the right way. And then you can literally pull it out of your butt like I'm doing right now because I haven't played in so long, right? All of those things make sense to me. My hands, they remember the motion because I trained it with thousands and thousands of reps going slow and building the tempo up. So it is chopping with the stars. So let's do one more exercise with this. And this, I think some people are still doing this, but the slow, fast, slow race kind of thing. So we're going to do the choo-choo version on the slow. And let's actually just go slow, fast, which will be 30-second notes. And then, yeah, we'll go back and do it again and then just go as fast as we can. So we'll see how my hands hold up for speed after not playing. So this is choo-choos or straight if you're just in that zone too for the slow. And then you're going to go double time. So if we're here, go 30-second notes for that. And then back out to that, and then as fast as you can. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. something like that. Let's talk about speed real quick. One thing I think that helps you get faster is really thinking about short bursts of speed and allowing yourself to just learn how to sound something fast. So if we're talking about paradiddles, how fast can you play one paradiddle? Right? Then off the left, right? And then how fast can you play two? Right? And off the left for me, not so strong as it used to be. But how fast can you just do one at a time? And then once you're able to figure out what one is, then two is a little easier, three, four, etc. And then remembering that speed is not a marathon, right? It's a sprint. So think about what you can do to adjust your technique, to focus on the things that move quickly, which are your fingers, to make those things happen. Squeeze in your fulcrum. Right, one of the exercises that's in here is a paradiddle exercise that kind of goes 4-2-1, but it's 4 paradiddles on the downbeat and then 4 paradiddles on the upbeat. So right and left hand. And it basically 4-2-1s it to where you're then playing a bunch of paradiddles in a row. So it's like this. So then I'm going to 4-2-1 that. The accent on the release is key because it sets you up to play that next paradiddle. So okay, so the idea just condenses it down. I'm going to try to play that as fast as I can, okay, and really think about just getting there, right? Make it fast. That's all we're talking about right now. I don't care how this sounds. I'm not worried about my sound quality right now. Right now, I'm in the space that I was when I was 18, 19, and just trying to get faster and trying to remember what it felt like to do that and to get my fingers and hands moving. So here we go as fast as I can. Let's see what it can be, right? And again, I'm thinking about moving quickly, thinking about that fulcrum, letting my fingers go, really trying to just go quick. So didn't sound great at all, but it was quick. So give me another hour working on that and it'd sound pretty good at this point too. Got to stretch out a little bit too. Okay, so that's touching on speed just a little bit. Let's do some grid stuff. If you know, not to sound like an old man, but back in my day, one of the things that really got us to understand things was just kind of stock grids. And I know they're getting into a lot of different variations and things these days, but just the straight 4-2-1. And I felt like if there was one exercise everybody should know, it should be flam accent, move the accent, right? Or the flam accent grid. So just flam accents regular. And move it through there and 4-2-1 it. So taking for granted that everybody does know that, let's do it. So this is all the way through 4-2-1 with that. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and. So one really important thing with those is the third pattern, the Dutchutta, right, is to really keep your heights looking great with those. Same thing with the Chitutta too, the invert version. Because a lot of times people let the grace note come way up. For you, John Merritt, I'm trying to keep my grace notes down. But a lot of people let that come up really high with that, and especially on the Dutchutta, not rebounding from the accent to the grace note at the right heights, right? So a lot of people Dutchutta start to look like that versus that. Let's do it again. 1, 2, ready, and. And one thing that I'm using right now is a black shirt, but I'm really trying to focus, you know, right about here where I see my sticks rebounding. So I'm really trying to keep everything that's not an accent at that same height. Let's do that again. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and. And then certainly we can do that with cheese, flam accents, flam fives. Let's jump into flam drags too, right? 1, 2, 3. Cheese you could do, right? Flam 5. All sorts of goodness with that. One fun one too is to just paradiddles, especially when you get to the ones, right? So you have all that right hand dominance or left hand dominance when you get to the ones on paradiddles. So a fun one to do. Another one that you can certainly do is haven't done that one in a while, but the one-handed flam accent would be one to do. But back in my day, I would do these all the time. And I think the best thing about the grid stuff, especially when you're starting to throw diddles and different flams and all of that in there, is that you're forcing yourself to play all these different motions. If you look at flam rudiments, you can kind of break them down into 4 different types of rudiments. Your downstroke rudiments, right? Flam accents, flam paradiddles, and the like. Your Swiss style, or what I would call controlled rebound, which would be your flam taps, Swiss, mills. And here's a thing on flam taps too. I've seen a lot of people play flam taps like this, and I don't agree with that at all. I think flam taps are very flowy, more Swiss style. And if you think from an orchestration standpoint, it makes sense, because if we want this sound, there's a way more natural way to get that. You could write inverts or this, right? And this is a distinct lilty, lighter type of sound with the flam axe or the flam taps there. So that's your control rebound. Then your inverted motion, where you're going from low to high, the absolute opposite of the flam accents. So your chitata inverts, flam paradiddle diddles, and the like there. And then anything that's sort of a combination motion would be sort of your 4th category. So chichatas, those types of things that work into that combo motion type of side. So that kind of covers the flam stuff. Actually, no. Same hand flams and alternating flams. So this, or versus, so the floppy flam versus straight alternating versus same hand. So I think the same hand flam is a great one to learn, because low end bounce is so key. Without being able to do bouncing the stick, without being able to bounce the stick low, doesn't let us play very fast. It doesn't really let us open up our sound down there either. So just being able to play 8s or a measure of 16th notes, nice and low. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Really, really will help you out a lot to do that. And obviously start at a tempo that works for you and work your way up from there. However, if we're looking at that same hand flam, the brain doesn't like to do that right away. So if you struggle with that, realize that it's just low 8 on a hand and high 8 on a hand, separated just a little bit. So a great one to do with that, you can just think of the flam accent check, and then 3 counts of same hand flam. Right, or you can just do that. The alternating flam there's a break point in there to where, depending on your tempo, those grace notes do need to come up to play a little bit faster in my mind. And you get that molar whippy kind of thing happening in there. I think, I said if there's one exercise everybody should know, it's the grid stuff. But I also think that the next exercise everybody should know is the old school Chugada, or the sort of, choose your own adventure type of exercise. So this is one old Blue Devil exercise. I don't know the full history on this. I believe it was Tom Float that wrote it. But somebody can certainly correct me on that one. But Mission Impossible, some people called it. I just always knew it as Chugada, but it was the Blue Devil 62nd back in the mid to late 80s, along with their little accent tap Robbie Bucks exercise. But 2 flam accents and 2 8th notes. And then 4 flam accents and 2 counts of 8th notes. So the whole first half. Then you repeat that, and then on the end, those 2 counts of 8th notes just becomes 4 counts of 8th notes. So the whole thing. Okay, so the cool part is that we can start to throw whatever we want to in those 8th notes. So we can throw flam taps in there. We can throw 3s. We can throw rolls, paradiddles, single 9, and the like. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of those right now. And again, my hands are starting to feel pretty good, so hopefully we're all having a good time here. Here we go. Flam, just alternating flams. 1, 2, ready, and. Flam taps. Flam taps again. Sextuplets. Accented sextuplets. Hugadicks, just that exercise, these. Loosen up just a little bit. One more time on those. Inverts with the Chugada, a little faster. Flam drag the check. Some other cool things you can do at the end is you can play different stickings and things like that. So we can get into with 3s. You can do sort of the putted 3. With the invert thing, you can play paradiddles. Right, left, right, left, right, right. So let's flam drag the check, but play paradiddle sticking on the end. 1, 2. Right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. cheese it. Actually, so flam drag. Yeah. There you go. Let's do some singles in there. Ooh, it's been a minute. John Weber, that was for you. John always had awesome singles. One variation I like with this a lot is obviously you can throw some paradiddles in there, 2 paradiddle diddles. But one variation that I do like a bit is singles and rolls and being able to go back and forth between that. So, or let's just do regulars. Single, roll, single, roll, single, roll, single, roll, single. So just that ending measure teaches you a lot, okay? So there's a lot of touch that needs to happen within that to really allow that to go smoothly. So we're coming off of a roll, then moving our hands twice as fast to do the singles. So we've got to lighten the touch up a little bit so we don't overplay the singles, right? And then same thing coming out of the singles, going into the roll, same thing. We don't want to under or overplay that. So let's just do the last measure starting right on the roll into the singles twice. So that much. More time. And I'm listening for that tap hum, and it's gotten a little bit better every time for me. But really not trying to hear any difference in sound with that because my touch is the same. So that whole thing, right, we're going to do rolls first and then singles and then just alternate every time. So then the 2 extended measures for the 2 counter and then the 4 counter we just did. So. Faster. Let's see what we got here. One fun thing I used to do a lot too was to extend the last measure and invert it. So you end up doing sort of a single 18 in there. Those are the things that I grew up on, really. I mean, I'll tell you, like when I was coming up and really when I kind of found my stride, I marched drum corps when I was 15. I was in the Blue Coats, had no clue what I was doing. Fun little story there. I was an alternate I was the water boy for the drum line until the first day of tour. Just really wanted to be a part of it. Had never played traditional grip before. Went to the first camp, was in the cymbal room by the end of the first camp. Didn't know how to play flam accents, or knew how to play flam accents, but didn't know how to play inverts or Swiss. And we were in a little closet somewhere on a 2x4. And Rob Muller, who was the teacher there, he said, "Okay, play some flam accents for me. Play me some rolls." Right, not nearly that decent, but did okay. All right, play me some inverts. Huh? Play me some Swiss triplets. Huh? Didn't know what any of those were, right? So learned what those were. So, just really tried to pick up as much as I could. I learned the music. Make sure I grabbed an extra copy of music when I was at every camp. And then by the time tour rolled around, they needed an extra snare drummer. They had 7. The drill was written for 8. I knew all the drill. I had busted my tail all winter, learning as much as I possibly could. I ended up earning a snare spot because there was I was in the right place at the right time. Got my butt kicked all summer. I was a kid, didn't know what I was doing, but I learned a ton. When I say butt kicked, I mean mentally, and just really just learned so much. Then moved out to actually where I live now, from Virginia, where I was living doing the Bluecoats, but stuck to it. Said I want to do this. Came out here, and all of the things that I had no idea that was what was happening that summer in the Bluecoats kind of materialized in my head, in my hands. I grew up a ton. After that summer, it all just kind of marinated and started to make sense. I had a very patient teacher out here, a guy named Dave DeLulo, who really kind of took me under his wing and showed me a lot of the sort of float stuff. And he had studied with Ralph at Santa Clara as well. And then just really kind of worked through a bunch of great teachers. But what I've shared with you today is a lot of what I would do sort of coming up, if you will. A lot of the exercises I would play in parking lots with other guys and just learn from each other as much as we possibly could. One more little thing to throw to you. I think there's, if I would have just drummed straight through, like if everybody's vocabulary was the same, I would have ended up going back to eights a lot more and stretching out and doing those. That stretch kind of occurred as I would talk a little bit. But if the groups, especially the high school groups that I taught primarily, I stopped teaching drum corps and consistently in '04. But I found that being able to just get their hands to play a multitude of things in succession was what really worked for our program. Obviously talking about musicality and being able to apply everything to the book and that as well. And I always thought it was very important for everybody to know how to read both rhythm and pitch, and know their scales, and at least, sort of invest in the melodic world just to see if you like it. If you're going to spend so much time playing a snare drum, check out that other side. It's really cool. I went to music school when I was 31 years old, already played in blast, already had a career doing clinics and all of that, but I felt incomplete in the world that I was in. So I went back and got a music degree. It was something that I will treasure for the end of my days. And, went to Butler University in Indianapolis, a great school for that, in that area. But really felt that just the playing constantly was helpful. So I took that into my own when I was teaching myself, if you will. So I would just chop out a lot. I would chop out on permutations. I would chop out on scales to learn marimba and to get myself through the curriculum that I had to get through for the degree. But back to this specific world, the constant playing, like once we were in the flow, we wouldn't talk a lot. The warm up would be 30 minutes straight of just a medley, and everybody knew the exercises. I would always hand out this packet, and we would pretty much get to everything, but then kind of whittle it down. So we taught skills and we gave resources to the students that they could refer back to if they had trouble with something. But we would always, work on, a certain skill and then go and stretch it out and then come back, and we'd kind of weave around with the hands. So you could play anything at the drop of a hat. And what the students found is that they were pretty much constantly warm because of how we trained their hands. There wasn't a certain thing that they couldn't play or that was all of a sudden hard of a transition, because we trained all these different movements together. We did all this sort of juxtapositions of skills in these simple type of one-handed rudiments and one-handed exercises, excuse me. So that worked really well for us. The other thing that we would do was we would just chop out. So just, 8 and 25. Or 8 and infinity. The 3 camps is something that I would encourage students to learn, right? Let me see if I can do it off the top of my head, but it's just a 2 height roll exercise, right? But that, and we would tag that on to exercises and just play whatever you want to play better at a lot. There's an analogy from Bruce Lee, which is, how do I get better at roundhouse kicks? Go throw 1,000 roundhouse kicks. And I think there's a lot of that, again, being an old man these days and out of it for a couple of years, that people, there's so much information out there that the work can't get substituted. There's all of these Zoom classes and so many resources and videos and all of that, but you're not going to get better if you don't put in the work for that. So I'll step down off my soapbox on that, but really just take your time and go. I practiced from the ages of 14 to 21, 22 really, because I got the bonus year in drum corps because my birthday's in August. So I marched for 7 years. And then still did another semester of college drumline when I came back from that last year of drum corps. So I was really, really into this and only this from a musical standpoint. I mean, I was all about playing the snare drum. I mean, I saw Scott Johnson teach my band camp when I was a freshman, and it changed the trajectory of my life. I said, that's what I want to do. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then got to play under Scott in 92 in Santa Clara. But you got to put the time in. I probably averaged about 6 hours a day of playing from the age of 15 till I was 22. So when I really got serious about it, when I marched drum corps, and that's, taking in the average of long drum corps days, but I would always find time on my own. I would always find time to practice on my own. I remember in VK in 1990, I was told to break down rudiments really slow. So I remember playing on a pad with a metronome, doing flam accents like this. And I would do that for like 5 minutes with 3 heights, grace note, tap, and accent. And then crank the met up 2 clicks, 5 minutes, 2 clicks, 5 minutes, 2 clicks, 5 minutes. I mean, after an hour, I'd be really just cooking. But as I mentioned earlier, right, and again, I don't really care how I sound right now because I know I haven't played a lot, but I'm really proud of myself right now too because my hands still know what to do. And that's really why I'm sharing this with you right now, is the reason they know what to do is because of all that time I spent playing slow, right? All the time I spent really focused on the fundamentals and focused on, the roots of things. So if you have trouble with a rudiment, break it down. And really it gets back to, is it a full stroke, a downstroke, a tap stroke, or an upstroke? And is it a combination of 1, 2, 3, or 4 notes? And those things, just being able to or that's everything. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, yes, it's not that simple, but it is that simple because that's what it's all created at. A cake is flour, eggs, sugar, a couple other things, but it sure is tasty. But it's those root things. If you don't have good quality ingredients there, don't got a good cake. So if we don't have good singles, doubles, triples, quads, and good full down tap and upstrokes, you're going to see some things not sound the way that you want them to do. So I encourage you to dig into those basics, but also push yourself. But go back and forth with it, right? Like if this is where you're putting your time, make sure that you're laying a great foundation. And maybe you're sort of midway through your career at this point. You're in college, you've played in high school for a number of years, and there's all those things out there. It never, ever hurts to go back and do a solid basics session, ever. My hands, when I, like, disclaimer, whatever, but going through that one-handed warm-up stuff with you guys right now made my hands feel great. And if I didn't warm up, if I didn't do that, I just started to feel those sort of synapses fire again and come back to me like, oh, that's what it feels like. But if those things don't sound good, all the things past that aren't going to sound great either. So I would encourage you to never forget the basics with it and always continue to learn. I look at my life right now. I kind of started a new career at 45 years old, excuse me. And it's a testament to never stopping to learn. There are things right now, like I feel okay about where my snare drum world is, but man, this instrument is fascinating to me. Indian music is fascinating to me. Glenn Velez is a frame drummer. Like all of those things is where I'm starting to find myself going musically these days, just because I'm still passionate about learning. I'm still passionate about playing. And that's where I'm at right now. So I think, are we good to maybe wrap up a little bit?
Yeah, we've actually got a few questions here.
Cool.
All right, so our friend Scott Brown asks, did you ever play with a tune, i.e., a click track, meaning play a rudiment, or for example, triple beats, rolls, etc., to a track of a song just to build chops?
Absolutely. That's typically how I would warm up. I was a huge Journey fan, still am. So I would probably have put on like Escape or Frontiers or something like that and just played to the tune. I think um, I'll admit, when I was a kid, I wasn't a great metronome practicer. I struggled with timing for a long time, and part of that packet is duple and triple timing and all sorts of things to establish that. And let me backtrack real quick, but I encourage you to be able to count out loud when you play, to count and sing everything that you play. If you're doing a timing exercise, count the downbeats, right? If you're playing that grid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1. You got to know where the beat is. I wish somebody was a little sterner with me when I was a kid to ingrain that sooner, because it came back to bite me at some point. There was even, I remember exercises when I was in drum corps that I struggled marking time to, because I wasn't as good, understanding displacements of beats and stuff like that as I should have been really at that time. But to directly answer that question, yes. And I find myself doing that more and more these days, just because it's enjoyable. It's more fun than listening to a click. But I would put on a tune and just kind of jam out. And what that also teaches you is not only straight time, but it teaches you, phrasing, right? It teaches you how to feel phrases. Most pop music is in, 4, 8, 16 bar phrases. There's a chorus, there's a phrase to it, there's more development, there's a bridge, there's things that are kind of set ideas. And even if you're just sort of emulating what the drum set player is doing, it's going to teach you how to feel where music is going. And that was hugely beneficial when I started to get way more into that. But yes, is the short answer to that.
Yeah, I know I use that all the time with my students, even playing things like Mitchell Peters snare drum pieces and stuff like that. Like the breakdown of the phrasing, it's all there.
Yep.
Franco Pena asked, how do you make battery heights contrast more clearly?
So that's back to the parts of your grip. It's also style, right? Like if you look at different lines, so like, you look at the way the Blue Devils drum and you look at the way the Santa Clara Vanguard drums, right? Two distinct different styles. The Blue Devils have, I would argue say stricter heights because they play a little bit more into the drum, it seems. This is just observing. Whereas SC has got like meteor taps, but it's still very clear what they're doing. So it's a musical choice in that. But to answer your question, it's really technique with that, right? It's how much do you want to stop the stick, really. So if I want musically, okay, I have to work a little bit harder to squeeze very quickly or cushion to keep the stick lower. And I'll get into exactly how I do that shortly. But if I want this, right, I'm letting the stick rebound a little bit higher, so I don't have to work as hard, so to speak, to keep the stick down. So what that really boils down to is how much I close my hand and then how firm I keep my fingers. So in my right hand, if I'm playing an accent and I'm coming in like this, how much do I squeeze with those fingers? Or how do I keep my hand open and let that happen? So do I bring the stick and put it against the palm of my hand, or do I allow it to just kick against there really quickly? Okay, with this, you can see it kind of jiggle just a little bit. Let me get my shirt back in front of it. Okay, but it still stops very clearly. With the other, it's a little bit more shocking kind of thing, but that's going to control those heights. In the right hand, a great exercise to do is to be able to do a dead stroke, okay, and to really focus on the back of your hand. So do that, barely holding on in the front, and just use your pinky. Then just use your ring. Then just use your middle. Notice they're getting longer each time. Just use your index, okay? So that's not staying down as much because I'm moving the fulcrum or moving that point up in my hand. So that reinforces to me that we've got to use the back two fingers, okay? But then again, how much do I want to apply that? Is there. So I can squeeze it into my hand. That's going to change the sound a little bit. Not a huge fan of that personally. But I can let it just bounce up against my hand by keeping my fingers firm, letting them be a spring or a cushion, okay? I can also hold on just a little bit more here, and that thumb comes into play too, because I'm not trying to let it come past that thumb. In the left hand, I'm going to do the same thing, that dead stroke. Okay, think about where the stick's going to go after it pivots from that fulcrum. If I'm coming in this way and it hits the drum and it comes back up, the first thing it should come in contact with is my index finger. So keeping that firm, developing the strength of that, okay? So that dead stroke, and again, I can think, very Scotty approach with just the thumb, can stop super quick. Index finger, still pretty quick in the left hand, just by the nature of the way that it's set up. Combination of that, I can control that, but then I catch it with my ring finger. So there's a lot of that has to happen in the left hand to press it down. Understand that you got to relax that ring finger. A lot of people don't use too much of the ring finger. You see a lot of people let their kind of thumb drip off or their index finger drip off, and they're really thumb dominant with the grip. A lot of great players, in the Scotty world that do that, but in our world, we got to use that index finger just a little bit more, I think, for the bounce aspect of what's going on. But a great exercise to do that is to do like quad bucks or triplet bucks, right? In this case, let's do 4 because they're easier to see. But if we think of our standard 3, 6, 9, 12 kind of height system, we can do 12 and 12, which would just be 8s basically. No accent at all. And then we can do 12 and 11, so just a slightly lower tap, quote unquote, in this. So and so that's a way to make yourself realize that you're not playing with great definition, but that's a musical choice it can be too. So that also opens up a lot of dynamic range for you to be able to play and touch things as well. Then 12 and 9, 12 and 6, 12 and 3. Right? And just that contrast is going to help you understand how to make those heights better. So we can start with the dead stroke, start understanding what it's like to force that stick down, not let it rebound, figure out what muscle groups we're using to do that, and then apply that in various intensities, I guess, as we're going through with the different height variations on the taps.
All right, here's an easy one. Somebody asked, what pad are you using?
This is a Vic Firth stock pad. There's 2 pads I have right now too. Actually, the other one, this is an off-world pad. That's just, I didn't want to hit any rim shots. I'm in kind of a condo setting, so I tried to get a softer pad. But this is an off-world pad that's got like an extra 30% in the of the dark matter that I actually had them kind of do custom for me. That was it just felt a little bit better. I wanted something a little softer and a little bit more rebounding. And I've always been in the Vic Firth world, always been more of a fan of the stock pad, stock pad versus the slim pad. But yeah, they're great style. Both of them are great.
So here's another question for you. And your progression, going from like Blue Coats to Velvet Knights to Vanguard to Blue Knights to Blast, kind of what's like one key thing that you feel like you picked up each of those stops along the way of that progression?
Oh, wow. Playing on Mylar and Blue Coats, and the interp there was very different than anywhere else that I marched. So again, being as green as I was, and I didn't know anything, I just was lucky to be able to get off the bus every day, man, in all honesty. But so I figured out the game in '89 in Blue Coats. That was probably the one thing. But I was really grateful that we played on Mylar, and then in '90 for the majority of the winter, and then most of the we changed at some point. Maybe it was before the season. I can't remember, but we changed to Kevlar right around tour or shortly into tour. And then '91, we played on Mylar up until about halfway through first tour as well. So I played a ton on Mylar. So I'll kind of say the Blue Coats and being able to. That was a lick in the opener. It was if I played it now, if I saw what that was. But we played it totally slurred. So I learned to without knowing it at that time, I learned a lot of interp things and a lot of diddle things. I learned how to play clean. I was on the end, and interesting, like when I first got put in the line, I was 1 in. And then there's just that stereo aspect is great. So I really think that everybody should play on the end at some point because your ears get super acute when it comes down to it. So I learned how to play in a line and got some strength in '89. In '90, I was 16 for the majority of the summer. I I don't want to say I figured it out, but my hands started to figure it out. There was still obviously a ton to learn, but I had a very patient teacher, like I said, in Dave DeLulo, and a bunch of peers that we just played together all the time. It was a weekly rehearsal on Sundays, and then we would do sectionals in once a week. I lived about half an hour south of where I live now. I would drive up to Anaheim, about 45 minutes. It was great. I mean, just a bunch of kids, all very much the same age. We just learned to play together a lot. But I would say kind of the flam world opened up, and the hybrid world and the West Coast sort of style opened up to me at that point. I learned how to learn a lot more that year, I think, too. The one-handed breakdown was kind of a thing that everybody was doing. Um, I learned how to teach myself and to be patient, which is still something I'm working on. But that's really started. No, I ain't breaking up. But anyway, Glenn is fantastic. But I was always in the zone of, hey man, somebody teach me something, show me something. And I asked Glenn that question one time over the summer, and he said, play a forte piano roll, and then proceeded to just pick it apart for a good 15 minutes till I was like, all right, I'm never asking him that question again.
I think
But
a lot of us have been in that position with Glenn.
but that, and it was really my first exposure to Ralph Hardiman as well. So musicality, it just shifted my focus in terms of what's important. Like chops was important to me before that. And then I really just got exposed to just a more musical thought. And we did a lot with sort of groove and Afro-Cuban things, and really tried to bring other influences into the marching percussion section in 91 with some of the things we did. 92 was a very interesting year. Scott Johnson, Kevin Murray, great teachers. It was just a really tough year for everybody involved, I think. But again, just I learned some more tricks of the trade. Learned again how to play cleaner, different style. We did a whole light touch type of thing, so it was not very through the drum, but still great heights and things. It's kind of tougher to explain, and I've lost that part of my playing. I've kind of gone a different direction since then, but learned another style at that point. So really, I'm 4 years in 92. 89 was one approach, 90 was another, 91 was a little bit of this light touch kind of thing that Glenn brought down with him from Santa Clara the year before. 92 was a little bit more of that, so similar world, but still very different. Then 93 went to the Blue Knights, and Rick Rodriguez, Ben Moffmer were the teachers there, along with Ralph. And again, just got immersed in that culture. I love the Denver. I have a tattoo of a knight's head on my ankle. I found home. I think that I found a place where I wanted to be, that jived with me. And educationally, it was again another style. Rick, I think, is one of the most fantastic educators I've ever come in contact with. Just in his ability to kind of really get in your head in a way that makes you want to work. And he assimilated a lot of different styles. And then same thing in 93. When I got there, I also was able to move down to North Texas, learn from Paul Rennick, learn from Tom Float at that time too. And I think Paul is just a consummate educator as well, and so versed in so many different techniques that he was able to really take everything that I had learned up at that point, technique wise, and kind of make it one. And I think that's why I still stick with a lot of the stuff that we did at North Texas and that Paul does, or did at that time at least. That it makes sense to me, and my hands feel good doing it. So I think 93, 4, 5 were all similar years. I was in the line at North Texas and at Blue Knights. My last year at Blue Knights, good friend Nick Angelis came in from Star, and he brought kind of the sort of Hannum velocity stroke kind of technique. So I picked that up there. All of those things came to where I am now and how I used to teach and all of that. I think one of the benefits that I had of moving around a lot was a lot of different teachers. I think in this day and age, too, especially, well, when I marched, after I did 1 or 2 years, I probably could have written my own ticket anywhere. And it's not an arrogant statement. It's just that there was very few people that did a lot of years, by my time. There was, to be a 7-year drum corps person, there wasn't that many of us at that time. Now with WGI, 3 or 4 years is kind of a heavy or something like that. But you learn the game, you understand it. You can, if you learn the excerpts and you're willing to learn. I think that once you're in a couple, 2, 3 years, you can go wherever you want. If there's space in the line and you're a good kid and all that kind of stuff. But I started to just chase teachers. I had an opportunity to march a place that I could have won a ring at, and do I regret that? To a point, but I really treasure the education that I had, and that I was able to receive through drum corps and through being able to spend time with multiple teachers. So I guess, man, that's a long answer because there was a lot of years there. And then in Blast, I got Hannum. I got kind of the Hannum, the true Tom Hannum influence, and my education with him came in the quirky Officer Krupke tune. Like, I worked harder on that tune than any other tune. "Quote unquote" Medea was easy compared to Krupke, and the inflection that Tom wanted out of a snare drum on that tune, and that was the hardest part of that show for me from a musical standpoint. But I really think just an open mind, learning diverse styles, being around all sorts of different people. I think that was probably one of the best things that I got out of the whole thing was, I don't think there's any one right way to do it. There's a million ways that work, and as long as there's a system in place and people buy into it, you're probably going to be successful at whatever that is.
No, I think that's great because you have had a lot of different experiences, and I think those of us that have done that, it all plays into who we become as a musician and as a teacher and everything else. So, so one last thing as we wrap this up, you talked a lot, inspiring like the students that are out there and stuff like that. Is there something that you would say to the teachers that are on the chat right now?
Never stop learning. And I'll be honest, that's something that I found myself walking away from a little bit, and I started to get a little bit burnt out because I just sort of got like this for a little bit, and that's when I started to realize that it was time to do something else too. So in one way, listen to your heart, you know what I mean, and trust your instincts in that. And I knew for me, it was time for a change. I needed a change in what I was doing in order to maintain the happiness that I wanted in my life, and a balance too, in all honesty. And there's other factors too, but never stop learning. And that doesn't just mean musically. I learned just as much from the students as hopefully they learned from me. You have to work within your system, but you also have to work with the kids too. When I went back to school, there was a number of teachers, and I was a very interesting student in college when I went back to school because I had been teaching for so long at that point. So I was, judging my teachers in a way, which didn't necessarily keep my mind as open as it should have been. But what I noticed was there's a lot of people that would, here's the subject, here's how I'm going to teach it, and it doesn't matter the questions that come my way. I'm just going to teach. I gotta get through 4 pages of this text today, and then next class I got to get through the next 4. But I realized, I kind of saw that from teachers that were teaching me at that time, and just maybe even more so realize, hey, you've got to teach the room. You get the message across, but people hear it differently. So, if you just say, keep your grace notes down, and somebody's still doing that, then maybe find another way to do that, or say that, or articulate it, or demonstrate that. But, stay inspired. Check out everybody, because it's all so great now, and it's so just diverse. There's so many different styles and so much different technology that's happening now too. But never stop learning, and be patient, not only with yourself but with your students, and be patient enough to do a couple reps slower. Be patient enough to make sure that everybody's getting it, and certainly in a group setting you have a schedule you have to keep, and my philosophy was kind of teach just above the middle in that sense. If we've got about 60%, if we've got an agenda and we've got to get through X, at least 60% of you got to get it, and then I'll go find that 40% or whoever on a lesson or do something like that and make sure we can get them through that and understand they don't get too far behind. But just stay engaged, stay true to yourself, and never stop learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Jeff. It was great. To everyone that's out there, we have our last one of these next week will be our buddy Roger Carter. And that'll be back closer to our time that we had more. He's going to do 5:30 next Monday. So that'll wrap up this series. And if it continues on, we'll see if we keep doing this and maybe get some more people in there.
Hey, one more. Can I just say
Yeah,
one-
yeah.
So shameless plug too. This book, The Next Level, is something I poured my heart into. It's got everything that I've talked about today. It's available on my website. Tapspace has them. Steve Weifs has them as well. But it's 150 pages of everything that's in my head about how to play a snare drum. Also, I am available for lessons. I'm teaching through a kind of a teaching service called Strive Mind, STRYV eMind, strivemind.com. So if anybody's interested in private lessons, I am available for that as well. And I definitely wanted to say thanks to you, Tracy, for putting these things on. I think I've checked out a couple of them, and it's just another great resource for everybody to just keep playing and keep their hands moving.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to check out this episode again or any of the previous ones, they're on the YouTube page that I've been posting. I'm excited because I think that beyond doing all these, this is just an incredible resource that we've kind of put together with all of these different people talking about their approaches and stuff too. So everybody stay safe, stay healthy. If you're band camping, stay very safe and very healthy at this time. And we will see you all back here next week. Thank you, Jeff, so much.
Thank you, guys. Take care.